Hello, black pupils. Hear the name of republic again, and of the democracy hyper additional, and the value of that relative to how every subject comes. We could individually grouped or together simultaneously to the extent we could discern truth all ways, relative to it being that extent of truth that we know of the past that was true always, and that we know now to an extent is true always, and that we know to is value to come that is already here now to an extent, like the seasons. To an extent, nature is showing us these three bodies of time, these three distinct bodies of time's complete body, as an identity of forever nature. And this is an identity of reasoning that is more probably and more practical to theorize, let alone to convict, that ancient pantheism was about the one idea. For example, this is also the identity of relativity theorem and the identity of hyper-relativity theorem. For example, we have two eyes. Other species bodies and insects apparently have two eyes, or it looks like words. There's quality aspects in nature that is distinct, but it is non-distinct too, and it is simultaneously, but also per a further hyper simultaneous, so to speak. There, in other words, even if it's only we are being shown by nature itself the scientific value of a further distinct identity of relativity, where it is not us or it is not the other species that invented this, where we are all non-distinct, distinct. Even our species, our individual humanity species body it's made up of all individual bodies distinct. Even twins. It is more probable and is more practical to convict that Romulus and Remus is about it goes with this science that they could no longer have before they discerned a certain type of victim / hyper victim that was propagated by a transnational criminal enterprise that realized it was going to get caught. So it forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded people to have to react this fact-cheating nature to even worse. Wrongly, not knowing how to do so properly, but having to do so. Just like now, no. Like with terrorism. All kind of threats with border problems. Countries like Russia and America that could traverse the earth, and you could, from America to Russia to Ukraine, the suburbs are a design that was designed before America's founders were born, and our founders communicated for us to understand how they did not have free speech. People get away with debating this because of how the breaching method showed all identities of the law, including everyone who's not the law, because it was including roles with exceptions, all fake. Now, this is important because when we are little kids, on a mass scale, kids were shown by nature the means to discern where the branches of government with colonial issues. In other words, and Native Americans, regarding the breaching method that came from before, that forced all the roles with it. Here, there, everyone, in other words, everyone's the complete hyper possession. Because it also, before America's founders were even born, before Russia's founders were even born, again, the suburbs in America and in Russia, they were designed when slavery was entrenched, northern colonies and southern colonies. So one of the things with the de-obfuscation, one of the reasons that they are still obfuscated, little rap guy and friends cartoons, is because, like, when someone teaches through a book and then sickly distinctly too, campuses A through Z, that the American Revolution was about a tea tax, fighting against the tea tax. When slavery was entrenched, sickly distinctly, northern colonies and southern colonies, and that against our founders, sickly distinctly, because it also employed how sickly non-distinctly would be and is still measured and maintained, left out by the identities of experts and by everyone else's inclusions with them, and with the difference of that and uses of it themselves with all formal and not formal treatments of subjects. Now, note what has relativity to the to the subject is a predicate, a main verb. Now what is think about the name, the phrase, but the name, predicate act. A predicate act could be a mail crime, a wire crime, one facilitated by interstates, criminally foreign influenced organized crime body, or a transnational one. Before America's founders were born, those kind of groups in standing criminal insidiousness nature /S. And the difference between those types of groups and the three branches of government and or the intelligence tied to them and or where anyone lived in layers relative to its uses of databases, and then in layers further, hyper-additionally, and where campuses of all ages and natures are. Be aware that fire campuses and medical campuses are also involved with this, because forgiveness is because we're right where and how we could use hyper-evidential to observe. What we're going to observe is collusion /S, where there was not innocence with any identity of the law and or counter, the people that had to, doing crimes. We're going to observe how predicate acts with facts and collusions with way worse, all kinds of federal evidences, rackets only capable of being justified as collusion /S. And again, this has replaced what James Madison and our founders communicated for us to understand. They were forced to pretend their roles with revolutions were about a tea tax, etc., leaving out that's someone who's going to defend nature and logic like that. You can measure and maintain. You're leaving out how the slavery is entrenched sickly and distinctly. Specifically, too, against everyone, to measure and maintain other things others are self-blamed, and rolls with that through all kinds of hyper additional motivations, nature's needs, interests, and the difference of that, showing them when there's, with all instances, descriptions. Forgiveness. So in other words, increasingly since I was a kid, retired police chiefs from Wethersfield have roles with names, with wire crimes with them, fake conversations with me at the police station too, so I can't go to the police station and communicate with them. They have wire crime acts and methods, fabricating transcripts with the FBI too. There is an Ian further with an upskirt nature principle involved with, even if it was made up, that he was involved with child abuses and federal evidences crimes, wire crimes, identity thefts and frauds, with foreign and domestic medical with the kids too. And uses of their own kids' pictures to in other words, a whole bunch of people with the name Leahy faked conversations with me, and they're involved with the Facebook pages of the campuses, and they're involved with the Facebook page of New Britain Superior Court and Hartford Courts with FBI Director Robert Luskin and his co-defendants before the world and the family members of courts and overt criminal enterprises, private ones, foreign and domestic military, where they live, where everywhere I live, next to it. That's because it's a method that where they're shown needs to hide what is actually recorded, what was actually recorded, and what can be discerned in the future if they don't keep rules self-valuing. There was also all sides in criminal and civil cases, including in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center towers the day of the attack. All sides in that case, and rules from inside the court, post-dated legal papers. They have rules with a whole bunch of people tied to the name Scalora and people with the name Colo and DeMoro that said they were cousins of them. They have rules with a whole bunch of people at Whiting Forensics and with state police at intercampuses and on off them. A whole bunch of police departments with the same house/S involved with wire crimes and people tied to them involved with home break-ins, other natures of federal crimes, as ones involved with federal evidences crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders. With the interbranch too, they switched names to forged names Connecticut as the ones involved intercities and interstates, planting and having planted. They, a Rick C.M. Paglione, a Chet Casper, and Mike Daly recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. And I didn't respond. In other words, they were influenced to make it look like we had communications at downtown Hartford. And I was tied to people I wasn't tied to at all. They've been planting evidences where and how roles with former mayors and an O'Brien family involved with further Sandy Hook intelligence involved with the child abuses of kids. Even if it was made up. In other words, that was child abuse making up because they fabricated phone transcripts with me, faked emails, changed emails. As their roles also with child abuses websites and women and male investigators as such involved with the FBI director and his co-defendants before and after the World Trade Center attack. Involved also intercities with West Hartford next in body dumping spots as their roles with this, as people all outside roles, as a pattern and of recorded uses of it too. People that will tell you we never had a communications when I was in high school in different campuses. They're putting kids and adults to rules of predicate acts with facts and overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and really how a whole bunch of countries are shared on and off the campuses because they communicated, confessed, demonstrated, recorded this too, collusions through time and time use /S of it. They don't even understand the extent of because of the use of the corners. Better than perfect, use /S of self-value roles with tellings of American history instead of communicating what our founders communicated. And nature itself shows us we have to understand about American history. Others and communicated in place for that. And its roles with self-valuing the truths used for lies, forced. Otherwise, they would have been sensed. Our founders and everyone they forced to be the rest. There are three natures of founders. Native Americans are inherently, actively, and progressively our founders. Even though they're fighting with themselves. That's why what they were fighting for is to get the Constitution unabridged, which is hyper-native pure. Give the quality of fact, cheap nature afforded. See, to get through forced use of truths for lies and pretending people. In other words, all kinds of shootings and research regarding it, the research locations regarding shootings and things like that. Central Connecticut State University and Quinnipiac University has roles with a whole bunch of natures of organized crime /S and roles with the leaders of campuses, deans, principals, medical leaders of the kids, also tactically delusions raw. And they're also, so the way they describe and study humanity is collusion /S with a whole bunch of different countries. It's concentrated with psychiatry, but that's also because of their roles with a torture and extortion slavery method /S, where the plural parts were propagated. It propagated roles self-valued. Otherwise, that body would be sensed. And too, blaming other things, others themselves, nature's demonstrations of that. A human fact, human nature breaching method is inseparable value from answers and as the subjects individually grouped in together that our founders communicated to us. which is distinct from what they say. Nature shows us there's a distinction between what is said and what is, in other words, what is said is physical. And I mean, the identity of physics is simultaneously greater than a more finite than. And it's grouped relativity to itself. Great. But we'll examine that, but in other words, there are predicate acts with facts, methods, self-valued roles with them against the people of the suburbs, where there are subject treatments relative to and as convictions and conviction nature. Just like a predicate can show us the invisible but still discernible main verb as or the value of the main verb. But this is where value is not just identity volume science, but it is that, but it also it is that distinctly, but also non-distinctly from that identity of volume science that we can't be, but we can't help not being it. We could be systems tactical ulterior from itself, but it only demonstrates our special difference, our concentrated special difference, and as Earth's, as a part of Earth's forced from here lease of Hadis. So you'll note the other species, not criminally foreign influenced. In other words, and comparing, in other words, even when they freed slaves and stuff like that, if you pay attention, there were still roles with torture, extortion, slavery. And when we left out how sick the prisons were, they recorded, Sandy Hook has people that recorded, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They have delusions too, man. No, but so they don't even realize it. But they also have criminally foreign influence, quality, and collusions with against innocent people